Hi there, Leslie with the Moxie Women's Foundation, and we are here today with another fearless female. Please join me in welcoming Cody Wasial. Cody is America's Joy Catalyst. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to meet with us.
I am beyond excited to be here and happy to share the space of joy and fearlessness. And so thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Cody and I met at the Mind Body Soul Expo that we both do, a couple of times a year at the Saratoga City Center. And you just can't miss Cody. She is just, a catalyst for joy. You know that she's there. She's got music going. It's always so nice to have her around. I was very happy to connect with her, but I honestly don't know much about how you came into being a catalyst for joy. Can you just speak on that a bit?
I can talk about that. It's a very fun journey. Um, One that had a lot of twists and turns and things I didn't really expect. So I originally, so I'll back up to when I was a kid. I was an only child, right? I had a lot of animals and things, and moving forward in life, animals had always been this like pretty big part of my life. They were just always around. I loved them. I had all different kinds. So it was very natural for me when I got out of college. I had done college for photography and I had done photography for a little bit. And then everybody got a digital camera and thought they were like, the next photographer. And I was just like, I don't feel like competing with this, like time to pivot. And at the time, it was like around 2003 to 2005. My neighbor says to me, well, why don't you do pet sitting? And I'm like, what's pet sitting? Like it was new, so new then. And she's like, well, you go into people's houses and you take care of their animals. And I was like, that sounds like something I could do very easily. I've been taking care of animals my whole life. And so there I was becoming a pet sitter. And, I was like, oh, it's going to be Cody's Cozy Pals. And I became a like little certified LLC kind of, actually it was a DBA then. And I ran around and I did pet sitting and it blew up. Like people loved me, people needed it. It became this very popular thing. And so I was driving all over the Capital District, like serving clients from 4 a.m. to midnight, 365 days a year. And I was like burnt out. And I had met the cap of what I could make, right? Because you can only drive to so many places and so many times. You got drive time here. And so I was like, how can I make this better? So I pivoted to, hey, if I charge you the same, would you bring them to me? And they were like, oh, well, yeah. So now I have animals boarding at my house. I have dogs that I was walking coming for daycare. And that worked great until I realized that my home was full of work all the time, cleaning constantly, all these things. And I was like, time to pivot, again, because this was like, building my dream. And it would keep getting to this point where then something needed to change. So I shifted again. And, my parents helped me and I got a building. I rented a building and I fit it up. Now, mind you, I have no idea what I'm doing other than I love animals and people love me. I did not have a business certification. I didn't go to college for business. I was just like, yeah, all right, let's do this. I've never had an employee. I never anything. I'm just going by the seat of my pants and flying through it. And I created the business in a bigger scale. And that part was the majority of the years that I functioned in business. So it was 15 years as Cody's Cozy Pals. I built it from the ground up to $500,000 a year. I had 4,000 clients in the Capital District. And I had over 150 workers over the 15 years that I did my business. And I was feeling really unhappy. It was the wildest thing. I had built this dream. I had all these things. People loved me. I was finally at the pinnacle of like, oh, Cody, she's the best in the area. You want a dog person or an animal person? Like, go to Cody. Like, oh, she's great with training. She's great. Like, I'd finally gotten the recognition from the community. I was well sought after. And I was like, oh, well, I guess what you do when you get to the top is you leave. Like, I don't know, you know? So I just, I just kept saying, like, I can't do this forever. This can't be it. Like, this can't be it. Like, I felt like there was something more bigger, something else I was supposed to do, but I had no idea what that was. And at the time, I was going for spiritual weight loss because I had tried every other type of weight loss there was. And I'm like, well, hell, let's try to energetically shift this off. And really, what it was I was in a constant state of stress. So my cortisol levels were just through the roof. And I was 167 pounds. I'm 4'10" and 3/4. I was puffy and you could see pictures of me if you go to my websites and stuff. Like, I don't look like me. It's the craziest thing. I'm like, wow, like my body was stressed. I was in a relationship at the time that also required a lot. They were depressed and anxious and all of those things. So I was also pigging myself out. I was going to all these different places. I'm like, well, if we haven't been to a shaman in the jungle, then we haven't tried everything. And so I was going to try all these different healing modalities. And what I didn't realize is I was healing myself in the process because I didn't know that I needed healing. So that was some wild journey. So I have that going on in the background while I'm also feeling these things about selling my business. But I'd never really said it out loud, really. I was just, I would say, oh, I can't do this or da da da. And what I started to notice was when my workers would quit, I got mad. I'm like, why do they get to leave and I'm stuck here? And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And so I started to have like this awareness to my thought of like, why are you mad at somebody for leaving? Oh, because you can't. And the idea that I couldn't leave my own creation was really a kind of a wild idea because I didn't know that there was an option to do anything else. And so I was driving up to see my spiritual weight loss lady, and I was early, so I stopped at the park and I sat on a rock and there was this pod of ducks. And they were like swimming and they're doing their little duck thing, their little tail. And I'm like, that's so cute, like, and I'm watching people and I'm judging them for throwing bread in there. And I'm like, that's not good for them. You should give them peas and corn, And, and I'm like, okay, Cody. But then there was like this one lone duck kind of swimming out the back. And he's just kind of like, yeah, that's my pod, but like, I'm a little different than them. I'm doing my thing. And I just kept watching that one. And all of a sudden, his little duck eyeballs lit up and he like stuck his head underwater and he was digging really for something. I was like, that must be gold under there. That must be like the best kelp bed, in all the lands. And his little flippers come flying up. And all of a sudden out of my mouth comes, I have to sell my business, like out loud. And I felt this huge weight come off of me. And I was like, oh, wow, interesting. Now, listen, if you're listening to this out there, I have no idea what duck butts have to do with inspiring you to say, sell your business out loud, but signs come in all different shapes and forms. So there you go. For me, it was a duck butt, which I think is really funny. And so I think now it's going to take me about 3 years to sell my business. I see this tarot card lady. She doesn't know what I'm up to. She's like, no, actually, you have this shift coming up in like 6 months. I'm like, is this lady crazy? Like 6 months? I'm like, whatever. I go home that night. I'm like, okay, universe, how am I going to sell my business? And I'm laying my head in bed that night and they go, call Jen. Now, mind you, I live alone and the TV wasn't on. So, send me to the ward if you need to, but there was a voice and it said, call Jen. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, so I text Jen. Yeah. Jen is someone who used to work for me. But she worked for the state and she didn't really love it. And she wanted to do something different. And when she worked for me, she started to do kind of like pet sitting on the side, which is why she couldn't continue to work for me because of a little conflict of interest. And so I texted her, I said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? You want to chit chat? She's like, oh my gosh, I was just watching TV and the kids on the TV were yelling Cody. Like, that's the name of the kid. I'm like, well, at least she's got a TV. I don't really have, I don't have an excuse for why, things are yelling in my house. And I'm like, okay. So I talked to her the next day. And, I was just listening and hearing like, what are you doing with things? Da, da, da. She's like, well, I really want to expand and maybe not work at the state anymore and expand my pet sitting into, like a little thing like what you have. And I was like, well, what if you didn't have to build it from scratch? what if it was already there for you? And she was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what if it was already done? And she goes, are you selling your business? And I responded with yes, which was shocking. I was like, yes, I am. So literally from that moment forward, 6 months later, tarot lady nailed it. 6 months later, they took over the running of the business. And just before we all got locked up in our houses around February 2019, they signed the full contract to take over the entire business. And so this began the road to becoming what I am today, which was an interesting one because I didn't actually know where it was going. So I had done this thing called mind movies. And it was like an app about like, your mindset. And like, I bought it. It was like $300. And I'm like, yeah, let me get into this. And I never touched it. I never touched it. And so while they were running the business that 6 months, I was like, okay, like, well, what do I do? Like, I didn't really know what to do with myself. And this woman calls and she goes, hi, is this Cody? And I'm like, yeah. And she says, oh, we have a free da-da-da for you at the Dream Builder Live. And I hang up. I'm like, stuff's for free. Nothing's for free. So I hung up on the lady and, I kind of had a little bad taste in my mouth for solicitors after 15 years of business. And so it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. She calls back. You want to talk about, the universe trying to support you and show you what you're supposed to do. Like they were like, all right, call her back, call her back. And so she calls back and she's like, hey, we got disconnected. I'm like, no, I hung up on you. And she was like, why? I'm like, because nothing's free. So what's your angle? Like, what are you getting at? And she's like, no, you got, this is a free ticket you got when you signed up for Mind Movies. I was like, oh, it's real. Okay. That's wonderful. So I'm like, well, what is it? And she's like, it's this Dream Builder Live thing with this lady named Mary Morrissey. And it's in California. And I'm like, oh, when? She goes, January. And I thought, January in California or January in New York. You don't have to twist my arm. Let's go to Sunshine. So I went to this event and I walk in and people are like singing and dancing in unison. And I had never experienced anything like that. And I'm like, what cult bullshit did I just walk into? Like, this is madness. And then this like really attractive guy gets on stage and he's like, I bet you're thinking like, what cult did you just walk in? I'm like, oh, okay. So they know this is weird. At least they're like honest about it. Like, that's great. And it turns out that was Mary's son. And, she gets on stage, he announces her and she gets on stage and she just walks out and she has such this like poise. She comes out and she's just this like, she's just a hug on stage of wisdom and knowledge and all these things. And the way she would talk with her hands and her lips, it like reminded me of my grandmother, the way she would talk. And it was so comforting. And I'm listening to what she's saying. And she's talking about all these different life tools, that successful people, the rules of the universe, the laws of, all the things. Like if you've ever watched The Secret, kind of like the laws of attraction and those kinds of things. And more. And I'm like, wow, I've been doing this my whole life. I had no idea that what I was doing was a thing. And it just kind of was like, I'm her, she's me. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, oh, okay. So, but now how do you get on stage? How do you share your story? How do you, do those things? And so I became a certified transformational life coach. And then I became a movement medicine facilitator with her daughter. And I still didn't really know how I fit into the world of healing and wellness for people. And, people are like, well, Cody, when you walk into a room, like, everything's different. I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, how do you put that into words? How do you put what I do into words? It's not Reiki. It's not, and I had some help from Brian who is the America's Breakthrough Coach. And he asked me some very specific questions. He's a good friend of mine. And I was like, And I finally figured it out. Like, what is it that I bring to the world? And it's joy. It's healing through joy. My job is to be all of the things that I am, the wise woman, the silly girl, the business, entrepreneur, like, and embody all of the different parts of each set, like we're all those parts in and of ourselves, each one of us. And the one that I actually am the most gifted in is allowing people and giving people permission to experience joy, to let their inner child out, and to not be feeling the judgment of it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I just one day came up with America's Joy Catalyst, and off I went. And it's been, I mean, that's a 3-year journey just to get to the pinnacle of what it is that I actually bring in a very focused way. You know, I did the one-on-one coaching, I still do. You know, and I love public speaking. That's like one of my jams. I absolutely love getting on stage and bringing a story to people and having them have these aha moments and walk out into the world. And I love creating joy retreats.
That's amazing. I, excuse me, I hope that our listeners, viewers, hear the same thing that I heard throughout that. I loved hearing, I did this and it was good, but it still wasn't working for me. Pivot. And I achieved it and then pivot, because I think so many people get caught in that. So many people would have just dug their heels in and would have looked at the bank account and not the heart and the joy center and said, I can't let this go because it's not normal to let go of a thriving business. So I love that so much. I read a quote not too long ago that said, you know, the happiest people are quitters. They quit the things that don't work in their lives, and that's amazing. So you do, you know, transformational coaching and joy retreats. Can you tell us a little bit about the retreats?
Oh, yeah, I can. So I have one coming up in July, the 22nd to the 25th in Silver Bay, New York. And the Joy Retreat is all about our inner child. It's about experiencing our 5 senses in a different way. It's about giving yourself the permission to come out and play, different activities for each season. So this particular season is summer season. So we're looking at kayaking and paddle boarding and nighttime fires and ice cream pajama parties and singing and dancing. And we have a guest, James Joseph Jr. of Unintentional Psychic, coming on Monday. So we have that. I'm going to be cooking different really yummy foods. And there's this safe space for everybody's inner child to come out and have fun and heal through happiness. And, you know, I was thinking about it. It's kind of like a, you know, like you send your kids to summer camp and they're like having a blast. And it's kind of like that, but like for adults, you know. And we're going to do some crafts. I have different games planned. There's a couple surprises along the way. There's intuitive treasure hunts. So each person gets to go on a hunt. And at the end of the hunt, they get to find what spirit animal, you know, is speaking to them for the weekend. So I'm going to go plant those earlier on in the day. So I have to go dig some holes in some dirt. It's good. It's going to be great.
So, you know, I think that there are, you know, a couple different types of people. There are the people that have already had that experience of walking into something and going, what is this? And you either stay and you get it, or, you know, maybe you've never encountered that. But what would you say to the people that might show up to this and have that initial reaction of, I don't get it. What is this?
Oh, you know,
because I'm a reformed.
Yeah, well, I mean, me too. I mean, I walked in on that, you know, crowd and I'm like, holy Hannah, like, we need to get out of here. And then the other part of me was like, what do you got to lose?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. You know, if you're like, you want me to what for a weekend? And I'm not drinking and I'm not whatever, you know, like it's meant for your inner child. What's my inner child? Just come have fun. You know, like if it intrigues you in any little shape or form and it's something that's kind of like, oh, that sounds kind of cool and different, or even maybe it makes you uncomfortable. Most of our growth happens outside our comfort zone. So if you can be open and willing to step into the space and give yourself permission to say, you know what, I'm going to release my judgment. And even if I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to go try this thing because it's kind of intriguing to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the space you lean into.
For instance, if you're watching this and you're, maybe a little bit intrigued, but you're not quite sure yet, what do you have to say to those people? Like, what are the kind of things that you see come up often that people don't realize need to be healed? Like, if you're feeling that you are, overwhelmed by your job, or, are there some really key factors in there that maybe that's the kind of conversation that needs to start to get people interested in looking at what joy could really bring to their lives?
Yeah. So, the idea behind it is that you're not just having fun for the weekend, right? It's that you're accessing a part of yourself that's going to support you in your everyday life moving forward outside of that weekend. And that means helping you navigate stress, helping you see different ways of playing in your everyday life, giving yourself permission to do that. So, for instance, if you're someone who like, well, I can't do that because I wear a business suit, you can, and there is a way that you can wear that suit and still maintain the level of respect while also allowing this other part of you out. And I know that because I have done some really outlandish things in the interest of growth and studying, how does this work? So for instance, I was a keynote speaker at the Girlfriend's Getaway weekend. And they have a thing Friday night where you can go and you all eat together, and they have a demo and the opening night thing. And I was there, and I was the first one on the dance floor, and this like 80s, 90s song came on. And I tell you, I have never humped a dance floor. I have never humped a dance floor, not even in my 20s when I was drunk as a skunk did I ever hump a dance floor. And here I was, 40 years old, sober as shit. And this song came on, and my moves, all of a sudden, I humped a dance floor in front of people who were vastly older than me and here for the weekend and who were going to hear me speak the next day. I would never have done that. Business Cody, entrepreneur Cody, never would have done that, because I would have known that that is not how you act. And certainly they were not going to take you seriously if you humped the floor. But for some reason, universe piped through me, God, creator, whatever you want to call it. It was like, yeah, hump the floor. It's a great freaking idea. And I could feel the judgment. I could feel the judgment. I could feel the eyes. And it was so interesting and empowering to not give a flying shit. Because I know who I am, and I know what my gifts are, and I know that I serve the world in such a beautiful way. And if humping a floor is going to turn you off to that, then you're missing out. And that's okay. And the interesting thing happened. I got on stage the next day, and I used that as part of my talk. I said, how many of you out there saw me dancing yesterday? And they were like, yeah, we saw you dancing. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, now, it's not going to offend me, and it won't hurt my feelings, and I would really love for you to be completely honest. How many of you were uncomfortable when I humped the floor? Yeah. And I had this one brave lady raise her hand, and I was like, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because that's what happens. We experience uncomfortableness and we judge it, and then we put a wall up. Instead of saying, is what I was doing hurting anybody? No. Was I having fun? Yes. Can we celebrate that I was having fun even if you didn't love the move? Yeah. Yeah, we can. And in that talk, normally my talks are very funny. They're very comical. People are laughing. Nobody was laughing that day. And my little girl went, oh no, they don't like us. Oh, shit's going down, Mayday. And then the other side said, no, look. Every single person's eyes were on me that day. You could hear a pin drop. Nobody was talking to each other. Nobody was on their phone. You're talking 100 so people, women, completely focused on my story. And I was like, oh, this is a different level. So I went from humping the floor to having all eyes on me. So the point is you can absolutely 100% be all parts of you, the childlike self included, and still maintain wisdom, business ethic, all these things. Like, so if that's the person that you are, if you're the person that is wearing a mask because you think that if you don't do the mask thing, that you're not going to be successful or you're not going to make it, or people are going to judge you, or people are going to judge you anyway, even with the suit on. So like, why not be the real you? And that's who this is for. I mean, yes, it can be for the playful people too, like, absolutely. But it's really here to support the people who feel like they're stuck in a position with a mask on and they don't know how to let that real part of them out because it's scary and terrifying that they might lose what they have when really you gain so much more. And then your business flourishes because people trust you more because you get on the floor and you hump it and you still deliver. You know what I mean? Like that's what people love. They love real authenticness. They just don't know it because they haven't seen it so much. But when they do, people are so drawn to it. So drawn to it. And that's powerful. And there's power in joy. There's power in being your joyful self. And that starts with saying to your inner child, listen, I got you. We're an adult now, but we still get to play. And if you work with me, we can make life a beautiful place for both of us, both that inner child and that adult self, the wise person, whatever you want to call it. They can work together successfully.
I love that. So do you have spots open for this July retreat yet?
Only 5 left.
Ooh, okay. How would one get connected with that?
Yeah, so you can visit thecodyfactor.com, and that's CODY factor. And basically, there's an events page. You can click on there. You can see all the details for the Joy Retreat. If you are catching it on this, I will honor the early bird special of $7.99. That's everything included. We're all in a cabin. It's a maximum of 13 people. So we have most of the slots filled already. And it's just, oh my gosh, I'm so full of joy to have this happen. I'm like, it's happening, we're doing it. Like after, all these years of figuring things out and finding out what it is, like it's finally here. I finally get to bring it to real people doing real things, and changing lives just one happy joy moment at a time.
I love that. And I have to ask, is the number 13 because that was the capacity of the cabin, or was that an intentional number?
Oh, it's so funny because in my head, I was like, the capacity is 13 in the cabin. And I was like, And then in my head, I was like, I'd love 11. So manifestation, comes with the thoughts and things. And I come to think of it, I'm like, well, what? Actually 12 is nice, like 13. It's all good. It's all good. So there is magic in numbers. I did not intentionally pick 13. However, it just kind of showed up. And I really, 7's usually my number, and we're at 7 people right now. So 7 is like one of my favorite numbers. 27 is my second favorite. Those ones really speak to me. So anything in between, it's here. It's here and it's ready. It's ready for people to claim their joy.
How many days, nights?
So we arrive on the 22nd around 4 p.m. and we head out Tuesday around 10 a.m. So it's about 4 days, but you got some half days in there. The main events parts will be on the Sunday and Monday. So thankfully it's this nice short thing where people are out all the time. They're still able to enjoy the weekend. It's, at a price point that people can totally get in on for what it is. It will never be this low again. This is its, maiden voyage of pricing for people to join in.
And that's
it's
all
going to be
inclusive, right?
It is.
Wow.
Everything you can do, everything. I'm cooking, all the things. It's all included.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and we're also going to be making a silver ring or pendant as one of our craft things. And that's going to be the gift that everybody gets to take home with them as their reminder as they go back to their normal scheduled activities to bring a little joy into those spaces.
That sounds fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit of what it looks like to work with you as a coach?
Yeah, most of what I do coaching wise is very intuitive. I listen to where your longings and discontents are, where you want to go. We formulate what your vision is, what your dream is. There's different exercises and tools we put into place to help really like get clear on what that is. So we know what we're working towards, what you'd really love, what expands you versus contracts you. So we do that. I also bring in tools that help you with your self-awareness, because the most effective way to walk through the world and maintain your own personal peace and wellness is by having an awareness to what's triggering you, why, and taking your personal responsibility for what that is versus saying that it was an outside source. Outside sources are going to happen all the time. How do we maintain peace? And that creates more joy. So it all kind of works hand in hand. So those are some of the key elements to how I work with people. And then we formulate action steps like, okay, this is what we're going to do to get here. You don't know, like, I can't get there. That dream is like, wow, it's like, oh, it's okay. What step can you take here in the now with what you have to move you in that direction? And how can we get your daily vibration up so that you're a vibrational match for the dream that you have? And so these are the spaces that we work in to create that kind of continuity in our daily lives that match what we love and then work towards it.
Wonderful. Can you give our audience like one thing that they could do today, right now, to bring more joy into their life that they maybe hadn't thought of before?
Oh, so I do a movement medicine called transcendence. And one of my favorite parts of transcendence is that it helps you change your mind and mood at will. It's 10 phases, and my favorite phase is shift. And shift is all about releasing energy, and then at the end of the phase, you fill your cup back up. So right now, if you're like, whoa, what? Take a pause, pick a song that makes you shake your body, like shaking your arms, shaking your legs, your whole being, and allow the flesh to like really jiggle. Like even like I love it when I can feel my belly fat like flopping around a little bit, you know, like that's when you know you're moving some stuff. You're moving the lymphatic system. You're loving the parts of yourself, like even though it may not be how you'd love to look right now, you still love it in the moment, and because that's making friends with it. So you shake all those parts, all the jiggly parts, and you feel this like little tinglies all throughout your body. And that's when you know you're doing it right. And those little tinglies help release endorphins and all this stuff. And you just imagine like it just all the stuff that doesn't serve you, just sloughing off into the earth. And you're shaking it down into the earth. And then when you're done shaking it off, bring it in with some breaths and light. And just visualize all the good things that do serve you coming in and filling your cup with energy, light, love, happiness. That is literally one of my most favorite phases of transcendence. And it is all of 5 minutes, and it can entirely change your whole day.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I hope that our listeners are all taking it to heart, and I will definitely be keeping that in mind when my toddler is melting down later, and we're gonna just shake that out.
Yeah, I mean, it'll work.
It's definitely going to be my next tactic. I'm always looking for like gentle ways to get her out of those moments, and I think that's going to be the next one.
It's funny that you say that, because there's a move that we call the toddler tantrum, where you lay on your floor, you lay on the floor on your back, and you like do the dead bug kind of thing with your arms and legs, and you just shake your arms and legs out, and we call it the toddler tantrum move.
Yeah. They're good at that. It's aptly named.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us today. Your story is really amazing. There are so many wonderful lessons in it, and lots of takeaways. I encourage anybody watching this, reach out to Cody, work with her, do the retreat, find more joy. This parallels a journey similar to what I'm currently on in my life, and I can absolutely attest to the fact that, just bringing joy and seeking joy in everyday life, as opposed to sitting in frustration and sitting in resentment and sitting in stress. You know, I was telling my husband this morning, I was like, one of the most joyous parts of my day yesterday was I was reading and I heard splashing in the background. And when I turned around, there were two little robins and they were just bathing in a mud puddle. And I watched them for a good 5 minutes, and that was very joyous for me for that day. And it's just little simple things like that really make a huge, huge difference, because I could have been worrying about, you know, the pool that's got a hole in it and the car, the lawnmower that's broken, and everybody's got a lot of stuff in their life going on at all times. And if you can just find the joy, it makes it all so much easier. So
it's a choice.
It is. It is. Every day is a choice. And I remember you and we spoke one day and I asked you, like, I don't remember what it was, but you told me that you wake up every day. I was like, are you always like this? Like, is it always, are you always this happy? And you're like, I wake up and I jump out of bed every morning. And, you know, after we had that conversation, I noticed that I woke up and I laid and I didn't get right up and I wasn't doing things. And I started trying to just get right up in the morning, and that shift in mentality makes a huge difference. So without even trying, you helped me in my everyday life. So thank you for that.
I mean, hey, every day we wake up, we get to make magic. Why not jump out of our bed for joy to do something new?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'll make sure to put all your contact info in the notes and get these out on socials and tag you. And I will see you the next time that we encounter each other, my friend.
Yes, you will. I'm sure we'll be in many events together.
Yes, yes. I'm definitely going to be at the next Mind Body. I'm sure you will too.
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Leslie. Bye, everybody.
Streaming. There we go.